Hello everyone, this is Doris Colgate with Steve Colgate. Not on the dock today, we're up on a balcony overlooking the river, the dock's down below, and we're doing our hashtag Dockside Chats with Steve. So Steve today wants to talk to you about seasickness, which is something that people ask a lot of questions about if they haven't been out sailing yet. So what was that like, Steve?
Well, I think that everybody can get seasick, and we did have a transatlantic race I was on one time, and we had a young fellow there, one of the best sailors I've ever met, who bragged that he had never been seasick and he never was ever going to get seasick. Well, we went through a rough spot, some squalls one night, and the next day what often happens is there's no wind and the sea's left over and you're rolling around, and it's not very pleasant. And we had lost a pin to a shackle, a screw pin shackle. We needed the pin. And up forward, this was on Dinah, and up forward underneath a floorboard in the forecastle was a big bucket of shackles and pins and all sorts of things. We said, why don't you go down and get a pin for this shackle? So he took it down, and he went down, and it took him a long time, but he finally came up white as a sheet and said, I'm a believer. And that's because he was down with head down, looking into this thing, focusing on something that was going around like this. And that quite often is what's going to happen. When I did a 79 Fastnet race, we had 4 people out of 12 who were just totally worthless. They were so seasick, and it's a terrible feeling. And I felt sorry for them, except one was a navigator and he had his own berth. And before we got to Fastnet Rock, he had gone into his berth and then stayed in his berth until we finished. After we finished, and what I had discovered about that time, that was in 1979. There was a lot of NASA astronauts, and they worked on their air sickness or whatever it is that astronauts get, which is evidently like seasickness. And they had come up with ephedrine and promethazine. Ephedrine, and I think ephedrine is the one that takes care of the sickness but makes you sleepy, and promethazine is an upper, and I might have it backwards, but the two of them, one's an upper and one's a downer, and it worked beautifully for me. Doris tried it, wasn't so good for her.
Put me to sleep for 15 minutes and then I woke up.
And some others it doesn't work for, but it worked great for me. So, and since I had to navigate too, and stay awake all night long, that was really worthwhile. As for more seasick,
well, there were some remedies that
right.
we tried, and some that we suggested, and some are you have to have a prescription for, like scopolamine.
Mm-hmm.
But what were some of the other things that we used?
We had heard that ginger was a good for seasickness, and so when we went out to Tahiti with our flotilla cruise, and between the islands of Tahiti, there are big rollers, and some of our flotilla people were getting seasick, and so I brought out a whole bunch of ginger pills that I had brought with me as an experiment to see whether this thing would work, whether ginger worked. So I gave out all these ginger pills, and it didn't stop them from being seasick. It just meant they were burping ginger, and it was very unpleasant for them. And it might have worked for 1 or 2 of them, but it didn't work for almost all of them. So that was one thing we tried. Then, a doctor came to me one time when I was in New York City, when our offices were in 40th Street in New York City. And he came to me and he said, I work with, I have an osprey who's mad at us being here. I work with women who have morning sickness, and I'm trying to find a cure for morning sickness. And there's a pressure point that is right here on your wrist between the two tendons, and if you press that, that helps reduce morning sickness. It has to be on both wrists. And so he developed a little band with a button on it, and that button had to fit between those tendons, and it actually worked pretty well for morning sickness. And he said, do you think this would go for seasickness? And I said, well, let's try it. So we gave it to some of our students who had a propensity to seasickness, and it worked very well for them. So then along come sea bands. Now, I don't know if this doctor, his idea was stolen from him, or he was involved with sea bands, but sea bands are on the market now. You can get them in the West Marine, and it's and so that's another way of taking care of seasickness.
But when we were in Tahiti and in those rollers, the way we really cured it was to take 20-minute stints on the helm, because when you're sailing, you are concentrating on steering and you're not just sitting there bobbing up and down. And we sang.
Yes, we all were singing, and that really was probably the best cure for everybody.
It brought
just singing.
Oxygen into our lungs.
Yeah, it was just deep breathing, and then there's one other one that I think is very good. It's emollient oil that you put behind your ears. It's called Motion Ease. It's on the market, called Motion Ease, and that has worked out very well. And now I think I've got covered them all, and I'll let the Osprey have his time. Thanks, Sue. Thank you very much.